สวัสดีค่ะพัชรีจาก Asia. And today I have a friend who stopped by for a little bit of lunch, a little bit of coffee, and I'm so honored that she's allowing me to interview her for this session in regards to media landscape and what's happening to the media since the pandemic and what her thoughts are moving forward post-pandemic for the media. So please introduce yourself.
Yes, well, thank you for having me, Natalie. It's a great honor. I've been in print media for 26 years. It's been a journey of experiences and ups and downs, but having learned from each and every one of them. And yes, I've been in a lot of sections, from sports to travel to lifestyle. So where can I even begin? It's such a legacy in the Bangkok post that it's finally good to move on.
So I know you've worked at many desks. So what would you say was the top three best stories of your career?
Actually did more than three. It's really if I put it in a nutshell as to stories that I was really, how would I say, were the highlights. Because each story I write with passion, and I think some of my best stories are the ones that I'm inspired to do. So I'd say, I guess, the stories that, are deal with people's lives, the Rohingya issue in Thailand, when I was able to interview these farmers that came to Thailand, telling their stories was really huge for me, especially. And then, of course, they also the athletes that I have interviewed so far, physically challenged athletes that compete at the Paralympics. Their stories, how they are, reach their success stories, and all the challenges they face. And that what our readers can learn from, so that was another huge part of my work. I guess at the travel section, it was times when I went to places like Pakistan.
That's interesting.
That really was, how would I say, an eye-opener, and it was so a learning curve for me because it was really cultures like, Indian and Pakistani cultures where people are so hospitable, regardless of where you are, you meet these really nice people. And it really shows their culture, the hospitality also to start with. So yes, there have been more than three. And but as I said, I've done a lot of pictures. I guess the highlights have been the ones that I was most inspired by.
So this video interview is about what's happened to the media, and it's about the media landscape. What happened to the media during COVID? Could you describe, how would you go about a typical day prior to COVID? How would you research a story? What you were looking for? Give us insight.
Well, I guess prior to COVID, because I've been with print media all my life, it was pretty typical. You kind of, go out a lot. So you can meet people, do your networking, kind of build that connection with, the kind of people that, would be your potential sources, and you work from there onwards. Because I've been a feature writer all my life, and not just a reporter. Reporting, you can just do following them, asking people who, what, why, when, and get the story together. As a feature writer, you actually have to meet people and look at them in the eyes, because that's all that inspires you, and also your, they can also sense that you're not just there for a story, but you are actively interested to tell the stories without any agenda. It's not just to spice up a story. So all these things, you have to meet, the person you're going to interview. And so it was a lot of fun doing that, And so when COVID came on, For me, it was hard because I love meeting people in person, not just over the camera, Zoom, and all that. And I know it was there, and but it was not my cup of tea because I personally, as like I get inspired by looking at people in the eyes, and they looking at me. You know, their mannerisms,
Feeling connected.
oh, definitely the emotional connection, you know, and also to let them know I'm not just a writer, that I'm their friend. And I mean, well, I'm not just there to just slander them or just spice up what, you know, what they've gone through, you know, to actually empathize with them. Because that's where you gain their confidence as well. They do it open up to you. So many times I had to come back and filter basically what they said because I didn't want personal stuff that they shared with me to be put in the story, you know, or maybe rewrite it in a way that is not that personal. So all of this, you know, was very much needed, you know, for the stories I wrote. And when COVID came, I still remember I was doing a story on a boxing team that were preparing for the Olympics back then. At that time, it was not really canceled because they were saying like, oh, like this COVID thing might just, you know, vanish maybe in a couple of months. And they said, yeah, you know, there was no real announcement as such that it was, you know, canceled. And so I still remember going to the Burma sports stadium, talking to all these boxing athletes and talking to their coaches. And I was just so excited to get to school, you know, and of course, as everybody knows, COVID came in a big way. And so this story was shown. And it was a real pity because getting the story wasn't easy. I had to get my sources that I had to go through Facebook and like convincing them to talk to me. And so you know what I'm saying, it was not easy. And so when I got that and when the story was shown, it was not a very good experience for me. And it's something I wasn't really prepared as well, you know, and so that all evolved into something that was everything on Zoom, everything on the phone. And the thing is, you have to realize,
Was it harder or easier or
it was
observations?
in multi-layers much difficult for me, especially because you have to keep in mind, I'm a person that thrives on inspiration. You know, you have to keep in mind that I'm not just a reporter. I
want the connection.
I need the connection because without the connection over the phone, of course I can come up with a future. It's not about just the future, but it's the emotions, it's the connection. But over Zoom, in fact, you don't get it. Even though you see that person on camera, but in person is very different. So I personally, emotionally, I have to admit, it was hard for me personally to really revert to, you know, other forms of, you know, acts to get my work done.
Okay. So one of the things that came up quite a bit, and it's been going on for some time, and maybe a bit more so since we were online, the kids were going to school online, you were trying to connect and get stories online, was the fake news. Yeah, especially coming out on the social media. How did that affect the media, reporters and journalists like you and things?
Well, you know, fake news has been around for a really long time. You know, things really basically, of course, the impact was enormous because people really, you know, copied agencies' logos, and you know, so it was really hard to, you know, get your head around that. Basically, you know, like what is really the right information coming out and what's not. What I did personally was to revert back to the source. You know, so for example, if it was you know, a social issue, you know, I would revert to NGOs covering that, like domestic violence. You know, I would revert to them and, you know, ask them what's going on, and they would give me the accurate story. So yeah, as reporters, we're very flexible in that way. This, and so you don't rely on what's going on. Like you would usually rely on, you don't, and then you go to the source.
And how do you fact check? Like besides just going to the source, but just to cross check. Was that harder as well?
It was definitely hard. It was definitely cross check. It was definitely hard to cross check because of the way things were going, and not being, any reliable source basically to get information from. For me, it was not a huge problem because most of my stories are not dependent on numbers. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely people who cover business and all that, or other stories that are connected with statistics. Definitely, for me it was more, whatever I wrote, it was more to do with people. I was always connected to people, so even the statistics I had, it came from people that were in that industry. So for me, fake news was definitely huge. In fact, it just was more work.
Yeah, to cross check everything to make sure everything's still for function. So, 26 years in media. Print media. So you must have some top 3 or top 5 advices for companies, individuals, agencies, and brands. What are like some of the best ways that they could work with the media that would help them?
Yes.
To get their story featured or get the attention of a journalist.
Yes, definitely. I think for that question, I really would like to, answer it in 2 parts. One is the management. Management of print media, especially. Let's face it, print media, it's a dying craft. It's been for a long time. You will have to come up with not just the reporting part. You have to delve deep into what the issue is because you have the time. It's not a digital platform where you have to right away. So you can maybe use Twitter to let them know what's happening. But print media has to go and do investigation reporting. So definitely management has to support their people. They have to come down and support their people. And when that doesn't happen, it really impacts the editorial. Because when there's no decree from on top, the section editors are basically clueless as to where they should be going. When it's all about numbers. So I do understand that the business side of it and the need for numbers to increase, right? But for numbers to increase, you have to support your staff, support the editorial staff, see if they're okay. I'm not saying look after them in the sense of that they can fall or anything, but to see, are you okay? What your problems are, and
direction do you need from us?
Exactly, to let them know how they're doing, and when you don't get that feedback, what happens is that the section heads are basically clueless. All I know is about cutting costs.
So when you're looking at, to say, okay, so theme this month, this week is going to be about this, right? So sometimes that's not being decided by the editorial or the reporters. It's also heavily influenced by management.
I'm not saying it to that point. It's up to us what we write. What I'm saying is about, there's no interference as such. There was in the beginning in some organizations, they have that. First, I didn't experience that. At the beginning, maybe, but later we didn't. What I'm trying to say is more about the mental health of our writers as well. You know what I'm saying? It's that, of course, we are seasoned writers at the Medical Post, that I've just left, and we're all seasoned writers. We're not just, right behind the years, so we don't have to be told, follow this, follow that. Of course, we are assigned, but 90% of the time, at least for me, I came up with my own stories.
Right, but and how do you decide on those stories? What is the best way, for brands or agencies or people or everyday people, like you mentioned the Rohingya story earlier,
Yes.
or when you went to meet the athletes, like what's the best way for them to collaborate with you to help you share their story in a grander scale? What's the best practice for that?
It's really about getting to know us as well, right? I mean, a lot of times I had people suggest all these really great stories that I didn't want to reject. But the thing is that you have to understand you're setting maybe whatever ground, the human angle to it. Like all these new schools coming up, international schools, right?
That's right.
How are you different? We come up with that idea, story idea. As I said, I had to refuse a lot, not because of anything, but because how am I going to look at this story so it's different? You know what I'm saying? It's
Interesting,
not
right?
advertorial. Why don't you just buy an advertorial if it's just that? I tell people, but because if you want a writer to come and write, it has to be different. So it has to be something that plays on the emotions of our readers, that makes that school really, really in its needs. And then otherwise I will have to, talk about different schools. You know what I'm saying? So you have to read that's my
In there as a feature article with like multiple schools. Right?
That's what I'm saying, and that's something we're not allowed to do. That's the thing, So I used to tell a lot of people in the PR marketing industry with how they used to pitch stories to me that honestly, why don't you just purchase an editorial? I can go and help you write it. It's as simple as that. But for me to write it, it just has to stand out. So it's not just me, and especially when you're a seasoned writer, what will take. Sometimes it's just something I feel you just have to look a little bit deeper. You have to maybe talk to your client a little bit longer to get that human angle. When you get that human angle, you can approach the writer with it. So it's not just because what I used to get was like, this school has all these this fancy curriculum coming in. And I was like, how's it different like from another equally expensive, equally great school? And so I had to really be very frank with them, but as I said, it was a good story though. I wouldn't mind doing an editorial on it, but actually to make it into a story, it just takes much more. And the best way to look at it, it's really very simple. The human angle. There has to be a human angle, but any other student doesn't do it. Could be the principal. This
Something has to stand out.
Something has to stand out, and that is PR marketing they have to put on their thinking hat.
This is true. And
it's not easy.
It's an everyday needing to create the strategy, right?
Exactly. But as I said, we as writers are also we're always looking for stories. So it's not that we want to refuse a story coming in. Honestly, the editor, when you're a veteran writer, not anything goes. You know what I'm saying? You have that standard that you have to find with. And as I said, even though if the school is great, there has to be more to it. Because of your readers, it's always about the readers.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Straight from the horse's mouth on how you can make your story interesting and stand out and garner the attention of a journalist, right? So thank you so much for your time today, Kun Vani. Khop kun ka.